This is the second workshop of the year. Sue very kindly did the first one and showed us about how to do chutneys and jams. And I want Sue to come back and do a little short video of how to do them later in the year, because I'm hopeless at cooking things. That'd be great if we could have a cookery lesson. And the next slide, please. As most of you know, I'm slowly going through the book, The Bible and Ecology by Richard Bauckham. And in chapter 4, it starts about where the wild things are. And this discussion on the Hebrew understanding of wilderness, that it is separate from cultivated land and also from forests, although wild animals can live in both wilderness and forests. Wild animals are described with much clarity and understanding in a number of passages quoted in the chapter. They are to be feared, but also to be fed in the sabbatical year, as I mentioned in previous workshops. And those are some of the quotations which give very vivid descriptions, well worth reading. I won't quote them all. Bauckham thinks these passages show that the Hebrew biblical writers had an awareness of wilderness and its creatures as a kind of otherness, in tune with our own current understanding of the importance of rewilding and how it is necessary for the ecology of the planet. Having a part of the garden or allotment left wild for insects and creatures and growing organically can help with this. And then we're going to do a little bit on the history of allotments with the next slide. I've read a few other websites and things about, if you want to change the slide, Barbara, to the history of allotments. And there's a little picture. And this is quite a famous writer called Gerald Winstanley in 1649. England is not a free people till the poor that have no land have a free allowance to dig and labour the commons. And there they are, trying to dig with probably soldiers and that shooing them off. Next slide. Yeah, allotments in some form date from Anglo-Saxon times, and the diggers in 1649 tried to exert the right to have some. Modern allotments arose from rapid industrialization, necessitating the provision of land for food from the 1908 Small Holdings and Allotments Act. And after the First World War, land was handed over to returning servicemen. In 1925, as Section 8 orders say allotments can't be sold off without ministerial consent, and Scotland has similar rules. There is a requirement for local authorities to develop a food growing strategy for their area, including identifying land that could be used by a community for the cultivation of vegetables, fruits, herbs, or flowers. And there's been further legislation as to the size and price for leasing an allotment. And those are two quite good websites which go into the history of allotments. And the second one does, I think, more than just the history. In fact, I think both of them do quite a bit. They're quite good websites to have a look at. And we'll be saving the presentation and the recording so you can get the references. Okay, so the next slide is on health benefits. Now, why we should have allotments. Last year, we went over how they're good for low carbon food miles, that they provide healthful microbiomes if managed organically, exercise and habitat for wildlife. We spoke of the benefit of eating fresh produce and having an allotment providing some of that, and that it could be possible to store some for the winter and even give surplus to local groups feeding the homeless. Our research this year suggests that eating more fruit, vegetables and legumes can also prolong one's life. There are feasible changes, the website, the article talks about, like changes we might make, and optimal ones, which are probably ones we won't do, contrasted with usual Western intakes, which don't provide hardly anything. Whole grains, vegetables, fruits, nuts and legumes are the best foods, with lower intakes of the others if you can manage. And well, we can grow vegetables, legumes, fruits, maybe nuts on an allotment. I'll have to look into small nut trees, see if I can get one. And that's the link showing this article of how we can actually increase our lifespan by eating all these things. Okay, so next slide. Well, I've been concentrating on seed planting starting in February, and I've got probably about 20 seed trays now, some of which are trying to climb out of their seed trays now, but I think I'll have to wait for this cold patch to go before I plant out any more. We might even get some snowy showers on Wednesday night. So what I'll do is I'll plant, say, a bean shoot. Those are broad bean shoots in there. And next to it, I'll leave a gap, and in the gap, I'll put in a bean. And so hopefully once one lot have cropped, then the other ones will come up and could have a second harvesting later in the summer. And I'll be doing that with all of the plantings. I'll plant one seedling and then put in a seed or a bean next to it, so that it comes up gradually rather than all at once. Okay, so that's planting them. Yeah, the runner beans are really ready to go out. I have planted out a few actually. I hope they'll survive the Wednesday event, but I'll keep the rest in here. And also I've got lots of runner beans, so next to each shoot I'll put a bean, so that hopefully we'll have continuous beans all over the summer. And I had to replace the fence in between the garden and the allotment, and I've done it with posts and wire netting. I do that quite purposefully actually, because we've got very high winds here, so winds just go straight through the wire netting, rather than if I'd have replaced the fence, it might have been blown off again. So I'm going to grow up the netting this year, and I've saved quite a few beans from borage, beetroot, runner and French bean, wildflowers, globe artichoke, leek, courgette and pumpkins from last year. I didn't manage to save tomatoes and things like that because my tomatoes went, they got blight. Okay, so the next one. We can get a peat-free potting compost. That's very important because we need to keep peat in the ground. both for carbon sequestration, but also if peat is there and the land has peat, then it won't flood so easily. I did an art thing up in Cumbria some years ago where with Cumbria Wildlife Trust, I was looking at peat bogs to sort of paint them, but also because if they're trying to reclaim the peat bogs and stop flooding further down in, I think, Keswick and places like that. And that's true of everywhere. So peat-free compost. And I've got all these seed trays I keep from each year. Just need to sort of bang them out before you use them, because there might be a few slugs and snails overwintering in them. And there's a very useful site there that follows the year through for planting that I've found, and I've had a look at March's one. Okay, so the next slide. Yeah, well, I did a lot last year on sheet mulching and collecting all your cardboard and your paper and all this, and it hasn't worked. The couch grass seeds flew in from other neighbours' allotments, and so we had to dig it all out again last autumn. And then my Polish neighbours also advised that using cardboard as a mulch is not so good, as there may be chemicals in the material not conducive to organic produce. And as they're all Polish farming family, I sort of thought I had to follow their advice. So instead of cardboard, I ordered a great huge cube of straw from a local farm, and we cleared the couch grass, and then we laid down some manure, straw and volcanic ash and let that overwinter. There's some couch grass back already, so we're slowly digging that, giving it a quick turnover to get out any couch grass that's turned up. I want to use the permaculture idea of no dig to keep the carbon in the soil, but well, maybe this next year I'll manage it, because I've got an awful lot of straw that I can throw on all the couch grass for the winter. So let's see if I manage it. Okay, next one. There we are. There you can see the allotment smothered in straw. There is some compost in it too. My daughter Sylvia and her friend went off to a stable yesterday and filled up another 20 bagfuls of stable manure, which when we dig out the bits of couch grass and dig it all, we'll dig in the stable manure as well. So hopefully we'll get nice big vegetables. So next slide. Yes, there we are. That's the fence. You can see that I'm going to grow the runner beans up. The lovely big long fence, probably about 20 foot long. So let's hope the beans like it. Something on the floor there that's a spare water butt. I'm going to put that up and fill it with some rainwater, but also when I get the nettles and comfrey to make in tomato feed. Okay, so the next one. So this is this year's pattern. I'm not very good at planting in straight lines. I like this idea of a mandala to make it more of an artwork, but straight lines are fine if that's easier for you. And so it's a succession of keyholes that you plant into, with the big vegetables at the back and the short vegetables at the front. And also interspersed with companion plants to deter pests and to sacrifice themselves instead of the vegetables. So that's the picture of what I'm mocking up for this year. Okay, next one. Now this one you'll have seen last year, but I've included it again in case people want to know the different crop rotation groups. So you can have a look at that on the presentation that will be on the website. But if we go to the next slide, we'll see how that fits in with, these are the companion plants to grow with those crop groups. So those are the different ones. So grow French marigolds with tomatoes, broad beans with borage, dwarf beans with kale, climbing beans with lettuce. Although I don't think I'm going to manage that because my lettuce has to go in with the cabbage, but that's the advice from different sites. And nasturtium with cabbages. I've got nasturtiums coming up, so I'll do that. And carrots and leeks together on the allotment to protect against a number of pests. Leeks repel carrot fly and carrots repel onion fly and leek moth. And I've noted that this muddles up the plant groups a bit. And they also advise to plant sage as a strong smell to ward off pests. And so those are the companion groups. And so this is this year's planting groups with the companions. So you can see I've put the two together, the plant groups and the companion plants. So tomatoes with marigolds, and the potatoes, my poor cousin Michael, we had a disaster with potatoes last year, but this year Ellie has been digging a trench and we're shoring up either side so that this year we can add in some soil once the shoots appear, and we're not adding so many potatoes, just what they recommend. I spent one morning reading up on how to plant potatoes. We'll build a frame for the cucumbers, and the courgettes just go everywhere, I find. I just put them anywhere there's a gap. And borage and broad beans, and onions and garlic under the beans and peas, with some of these other things to deter pests. Now my Brassica patch is fixed, but I rotate within it. So cabbage with nasturtiums at the other side from last year, and then lettuce and kale on the other. And group D, chard, beetroot. I'm trying carrots for the first time, and some leeks, as they advise they protect carrots. So those are my planting groups and the seeds. And if you haven't planted seeds yet, it's not too late. I mean, because everything's going to go back to bed with this cold patch. So you can grab some seeds and still plant them. It's really not too late at all. In fact, this afternoon, because it was quite cold here, I planted a second lot of seeds from various ones that I had left over. So keep planting and start planting. So next slide. That's the Royal Horticultural Society website. That's their crop rotation, which is again very similar, but it's quite a nice website to have a look at. I've included it underneath the link. Okay, so next one. So I've said, well, ask questions in the chat or breakout groups. I'll answer them if I can, or I'll look into them. And I'm just an allotment holder, not an expert. So I'm learning what not to do each year too. And next month I'm going to do planting out, different methods of planting out, pest control, more companion planting, bit of pond dipping. Got loads of tadpoles in one of the ponds. and I'm going to spray the fruit trees with neem oil. My older daughter gave me a huge tub of neem oil, which is an Indian oil, which is good for loads of things, but I also read it's good for spraying fruit trees with. And that's the end of that. And I thought, because of what's happening in that poor country, we'd say a little prayer for them, but for everyone suffering anywhere in blighted places that don't have our fortunate peace and prosperity that we have here. Molitva za Ukrainian. My Ukrainian is a bit rusty. So shall I say it or? Yeah. Lord, oh the great and almighty, protect our beloved Ukraine. Bless her with freedom and light of your holy rays. With learning and knowledge enlighten us, your children small. In love pure and everlasting, let us, O Lord, grow. We pray, O Almighty, Lord Almighty, protect our beloved Ukraine. Grant our people and country all your kindness and grace. Bless us with freedom, bless us with wisdom, guide into kind world. Bless us, O Lord, with good fortune, forever and evermore. Amen. Yeah. So definitely a prayer for them at the moment.
Yeah. Thank you, Marisa, and thank you for ending with that prayer. It's very much in our minds. Anybody got any thoughts at the moment? What would you like? If not, we can go into.
I've got one question from Kathy. Kathy,
Yeah.
you're muted.
Okay, I was just curious because I hadn't ever heard about you put straw down for getting rid of couch grass. Is that just to smother it, or?
Well, we tried, but it doesn't work. You have to actually dig the couch grass out first. And then I'm hoping that subsequent years of putting straw down in the autumn will stop it coming back.
Oh, right. So does this, I mean, up in the north where I am, people are always worried about putting straw down because they say, well, it will make a nice home for lots of slugs. But maybe in your part of the country, maybe that isn't so important.
Well, I've found in my soil, which is very hard clay, that it's actually broken the soil up quite well, and it's kind of improved the soil quality, which was sort of rock hard previous springs.
So you put it on in the autumn, and then in the spring you kind of dig it in a bit. Is that it?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
I think if you just left it on the top, you probably might be encouraging all the mollusks. But no, we've found that we have to sort of dig out a little bit of couch grass that's come back from my naughty neighbours, and also then digging it in. It's making soil really good to work with.
Right.
And one of my friends, her mother has a small holding in France, and apparently she just chucks straw down every autumn. But I do a mixture of straw and horse manure and volcanic ash from the allotment shop. That gives the minerals.
Does that, like, I never heard of volcanic ash before. Does it come in a bag?
I think it's called rock dust.
Oh, yes. Hmm.
It's from Scotland, and my allotment shop do it in bulk. So you don't need very much of it, but it puts minerals back in the soil.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
Sue's got a hand up, Marisa.
Hello, Sue.
Hello. It's just a couple of things. First of all, about horse manure. We went to our riding stables locally on Ealing Common and got horse manure a few years ago. And the following spring, I said to my old friend, whose allotment it was at that time, why have we got all these oats coming through? And she said, I don't know. And then I thought, what do horses eat? So I would advise any horse manure that you put down, yes, it's going to be great in the long run, but let it rot down first and really mature. Otherwise you will get an awful lot of oats or whatever else horses eat coming through. Secondly, as far as planting, I've been disappointed for several years running now by planting seeds in the conservatory, which is quite cool, and planting them out, and then late frosts actually wiping them out. So I've been planting out longer and longer, and I think this is going to be a trend with climate change now. We have had late frosts right up to June, and I've sometimes had to replant beans as late as the beginning of June. I still get a good crop, but it's much later. So just be wary, that's all I would say. If you're close enough to be able to whip out and put fleece over the top if it's going to get cold, that's fine. But some of us live a bit further away from our allotments and can't do that on the spur of the moment.
Yes, I might have to put fleece over the run of beans I planted out. But one other thing I've noticed about digging in the straw mulch that I put down is that there's still enough of the straw to be there to still act as a mulch. And all the I've planted out some broad beans already because they were climbing out of their tray. And because they're sort of surrounded by this mixture of earth and rotted down straw from last year, they seem to be keeping warmer, if I might think that the ground has a better temperature than in previous years when I was just having soil around them. So,
I think broad beans are hardier, aren't they, than say runner beans and things.
I hope so.
I've planted, a lot of my allotment friends plant broad beans in the autumn. I tried that too this year, but out of a dozen or so beans, only 2 have survived. So I don't know, it's it's in the lap of our God.
I think planting in the autumn where I am, my neighbours who've tried that, they tend to get eaten by creatures.
Yes, there's that as well.
We still have deer that visit our allotments from time to time in Bournemouth, which is very nice for them, and they much enjoy the vegetables.
You'd like to share more with yourself as well. Fair enough.
Any other questions?